Welcome to Saturday's Warrior, the channel where we talk all things BYU and Big 12. I'm Trevor, and with me, as usual, is Adam. And today we are going to be talking about what was a wild weekend in college football, but especially with the BYU-Arizona State game, and talking about what that means for BYU's playoff hopes and looking ahead to this final week in the Big 12 and across college football, what we need to see happen, and we'll also make our picks. And so before we do that, though, please like this video, subscribe to the channel so you can catch all of our content. And we will also be doing a live reaction after the game. Missed it a couple weeks ago because of an accident, and things were going on after a loss. So I had to do it after the next loss, but I forgot that I had family commitments. So we went on late. But because this is a late game, late kickoff for BYU, we will be going on directly right after the game ends against Houston. And then we will have our live reactions and hopefully be celebrating opportunity for BYU to go play in the Big 12 Conference Championship game. So with that all out of the way now, Adam, where do we start first? Do we start at the ending, or do you want to work your way through the game and build up to the dramatic finish?
Is the ending the only thing worth talking about? I mean, that first half was painful. There are times when you just want to look away because of the way you're playing on the field, and that was tough. That was some tough play to have to absorb in the first half, and it's so strange, the first half to the second half, because we were just absent. But we've been absent since the Utah game. And you chalk it up to the Utah game, you're like, well, rivalry game, best defense we faced all year. Then we go against Kansas, bad defense, we choked, whatever you want to put on there, no offense. Now we're going through, and the first half of the ASU game looked even worse than Kansas. I mean, could not do anything. And I know there was a lot of cry against A-Rod, a lot of it justified when your crew just doesn't perform. Hard to defend that. And the turnaround in the second half was remarkable, and we can certainly get to that. That was some fun football, but first half was, I think the easiest way to put it was it was very, very difficult to watch as a BYU fan. I can stomach losing like that is painful.
Yeah, I fortunately had other commitments, so at halftime I kind of went, and it just made it easy. I was just like, I was done. It made it easy to just kind of check out. And then while we were out, my phone kept buzzing and stuff. I was like, this is either really good or really bad. I don't want to know. I didn't look at my phone. I actually ignored some other texts that I needed to respond to because I didn't want to look at my phone at all. So anyway, I came back, and then I caught up, watched the game and caught up. And yeah, definitely tale of two very different halves. But I think the key thing to look at here is that BYU came out flat, whereas ASU came out looking like they were playing for their lives with everything on the line, and that they wanted it. And they came out with that fire, and they played big. And even in the second half, I think when BYU came up with those stops, I mean, part of it is because ASU just doesn't have any confidence in their field goal kicker.
Yeah.
I mean, that is a piece of it. If they had any sort of confidence in their field goal unit, then BYU's likely down by even more, because those drives went deep into BYU territory, very deep. And in all honesty, they probably hurt themselves. There were some drives that stalled because of some bad passes, or maybe some play calling or whatever. Not to say that BYU's defense didn't stiffen up and didn't do their job, but it still felt like ASU probably should have scored on at least one of those drives. And so I don't put that all on BYU, like, oh, we just shut them down defensively completely. Not really. They still went the full length of the field and were definitely in position to score some more. So having said that, special teams is definitely still part of the game. There's three phases. Oh, yeah. You can't, if they don't have a good kicking unit, then that's still on them. But speaking of special teams, they pulled out a great special teams play with the onside kick, which BYU just was not ready for at all. And, they had the momentum and caught BYU off guard with it, and it was a great call, great play, and it worked out exactly like they wanted. And honestly, I think they probably felt like BYU's not really moving the ball. This is a risk worth taking, and we can kind of put the game out of hand now, which technically they kind of did. But I mean, it seems like if BYU could have even just gotten a touchdown at the end of the first half instead of settling for that field goal, the second half would have been very different. But I don't know what else is there. You mentioned A-Rod. Some people want him canned, and I, maybe that is the right move. I feel like he's shown a lot of progression this season and ability to adjust, but it feels like it's always at the half. Like he can't really make it, in real time adjustments, and maybe there's reasons for that, but and maybe he gets fired after the season. But right now, I mean, he's who we've got, so I don't really know what the answer is if we move away from A-Rod, but there's got to be somebody. I don't know. Are you moving that way yet? Let's move on.
So I'm not, mostly because I'm pegged to the reality that we're not moving away from him. That's not Satake's style. He's not going anywhere next year. I mean, maybe if we score 0 points against Houston in a bowl game, maybe. But he's shown enough improvement where I think someone like Satake is going to say, okay, last year. And so as a fan, I don't want to sit there and be calling for someone's job and hate the offense. I just want to watch and enjoy the game. And I've talked about before how I enjoy A-Rod's style more than say Detmer or Doman. Like, my eyes are watering during those games. I'm falling asleep. It's just so I cannot stand a power run game. And don't get me wrong, A-Rod certainly has his deficiencies. There are things that are painful to watch. The predictability of the offense is tough. My cousin sent me a tweet by Hemahemuli Jr. where he's commenting on the cougar that's walking around and says, "What would you do if you saw a cougar like this in the wild?" And he says, "Well, if it's second down, he's going to run it, and if it's third and short, it's either going to be a jet sweep or a speed option to the boundary." And I'm like, man, that is spot on. And so there is ample room for criticism, as there often is for offensive coordinators. I mean, if you're not a top 25 offense, there you go. I thought that was hilarious. If you're not a top 25 offense in college football, there's going to be tons of room to criticize the offensive coordinator. There just is. And especially at BYU, where we're accustomed to big time offense. That is our brand. That's always been our brand the past 50 years. That's who we are, is record setting offense. And so when we fall short of that, which we do most years recently, you're not satisfied as a fan. And so I try not to get caught up in that, because it's the easy thing to point to. And like I've said before, I'd rather us win 52-48 than 17-13. Like, I love big time offense, even if our defense is struggling. So yeah, I'd love to see something different there. You talk about the rumor mill, Jason Beck, who's tearing it up at New Mexico right now with a really fun brand of offense. He could come in maybe, but the reality is he's improved enough where I don't see Satake moving away from him. And so it's just speculation and rampant frustration to say, he should be fired. He is what we've got. I think he's a more entertaining brand of football than we've had in the past. So we're going to ride with it until he's not there.
Yeah, I'm not completely out on him, but I definitely have, share a lot of the frustrations with people about A-Rod. So we'll see. Yeah, Jason Beck. I didn't even think about that. Yeah, because their offense is really good. Although I'm sure he's pretty loyal to Bronco too. So
he could be. I don't know if he passed up a chance at P4 football at BYU.
Especially BYU, yeah. I mean, that's a good point. So who knows? So, yeah, I guess we'll wait and see. But it seems like in the second half, because in the first half it's a lot of east to west, right, and trying to go around the edges. Again, that kind of spilled over with this team. It just felt like kind of timid to go right at ASU, and there must have been something they saw. But once we started just kind of going at them, and especially the pass game, and picking up the pace. Now, obviously, they did mix in some plays that they slowed it down a little bit, and I think that's what you have to do. I don't think you can go 100 miles an hour every play, but mixing in the tempo, just kind of keeping the other team off guard. Going back to what you said, being a little bit less predictable.
Yeah, and it was, to me, and based on what Hans Olsen was saying in the first half, it looked like ASU was rushing 4 on a fairly conservative rush, and then dropping in zone coverage and basically daring Retzlaff to beat him with his arm. And he was tentative. And it almost felt like the first half I looked at him and I'm thinking, man, we have just drilled the gunslinger mentality out of this guy. There's no more gunslinger left. He was so hesitant in the pocket and so careful. I don't want to make a mistake. I don't want to make a mistake. The pendulum had swung the other direction to where he was so fearful of throwing the pick that he wouldn't throw the ball. And against that type of defense, you've got to gun it in there. It would be for an accurate gunslinger, you're licking your chops. And he's going to go out there, and if he had a second half like a first half, he would have thrown for 500 yards against an offense like that. And so it seems like the switch flipped eventually, and he went out there and he got aggressive with the pass game, and it was super effective. And he missed his mark a few times in the second half, but not often. And they had a lot of success with an aggressive passing game, which I think was there in the first half. It's for whatever reason, whether it was the play calling or whether it was Retzlaff's mentality or his hesitancy, he could not throw the ball against that team, and he was holding on to it forever in the first half, and just couldn't get successful drives together.
Yeah, the thing about Jake is you have to let him just kind of cook, and that's when he's at his best, and it's going to come with some risk with it. The other thing is the O-line to me didn't seem to be blocking as well. Our run game was having trouble taking off. It seems like I haven't heard them say this, but LJ Martin may be on a pitch count or something where they only want him to get so many plays or something because they take him off. Yeah, I don't know.
He is our single best player on the entire football team. I think he rates even higher than some of our defensive players. At least his ceiling is higher. And maybe.
Yeah.
But he's amazing. And he is on a pitch count. And I don't know if that's because they're worried about injury or if he is injured or I don't know what it is. But if you've got LJ Martin, give the man the rock 25 times a game at least. At least. And when the conference championship berth is on the line, give him the rock 30 times. Like he is the perfect I don't even know why Ropati's on the field, to be honest. Like, is LJ's conditioning so poor that he needs a breather every 2 snaps? Like, I don't understand the pitch count. I'm sure there's a reason behind it. BYU is notoriously tight-lipped about those things, and I get it. And then after the season, you hear like he had a nagging injury, this or that, or so. But he does seem like he's on a pitch count, and it's tough because you want that guy to be your workhorse, as talented as he is.
Yeah. A couple other things just going through the team. Well, I mentioned the O-line. There's been some shuffling around there, and that does seem to have affected the team a little bit. And just the rush blocking, and then I guess even pass blocking. But I want to talk about the receivers a little bit because Marion got more involved in this, and actually JoJo Phillips too, which was to me reassuring because we know Roberts is gone. He's already said as much, and then Darius Lassiter is he's out of eligibility. And in this game, he had his standard drop pass right at the beginning, right? That you're like, oh, okay, well, where's his good? Hopefully he gets a redeeming pass. And he did have some, or a catch. He did have some redeeming catches, nothing like overly spectacular, but he certainly was involved. But somebody made a comment on, because I was talking about this in my video on my live reaction after the game. And somebody commented that, just that about Lassiter is that not only does he have those drop passes consistently, but he, his attitude, his body language, all those things that we've talked about throughout the season. And he's happy to see him go. But he even made a comment on the play. Oh, now I'm forgetting which play, and I should have had the comment queued up. But he said, there's that play where it looked like he wasn't expecting to be involved in it. He didn't think the ball was going to be coming his way. And so he's kind of not going full steam ahead, and the pass is off. And is that the one that led to the interception? Was that to Lassiter at the end? Okay, so that was
at the end.
For some reason I was thinking that was JoJo Phillips. But yeah, so it was Lassiter. And so he thinks that interception was really on him, not really being, fully committed into the play because he thought it wasn't coming to him. And so, I agree with all those things. I've had my gripes about Lassiter, but and while we do have a lot of depth in the receiver core, I'm a little bit concerned that we're going to have, Marion and Phillips have been great pieces, but can they step up and be the guys now once these other two leave?
Yeah, you hope Phillips can. Because he just has such a high ceiling. You feel like he's not there yet. I mean, huge frame, huge catch radius. You saw him on the deep ball against SIU. He's had a couple other shots like that. I think it was him. He had a couple steps on the guy against Utah. So he has the full skill set. And so you hope Phillips becomes wide receiver one. I feel like Marion is a super dynamic player, but you're seeing his ceiling. And he's sort of that fully matured football player who's very, very good. I don't think he's your one. I think
He's a great
he's a great 2 or 3, right? And so then you got Parker Kingston, you got Cody Hagan, who's up there, who you expect him to take a leap and be where Phillips is this year. You hope Hagan is next year. So you've got some pieces there. And then you got a 4-star guy coming in. We'll see if he can contribute right away. I feel like the wide receiver cupboard is still fully stocked going into next year. If Phillips can make that jump and be that guy, because I think in Marion and Kingston and Hagan, you got really strong pieces around him.
Man, that pass, that second to last pass that went
I know. That's the one I think Retzloff wants back. I think he did throw the pass to Lassiter in the correct area. You saw it really went through Lassiter's hands. He was reacting last minute. It very well could have been that he wasn't expecting the ball to come to him, and he should have been. But so I don't put that one entirely on Jake, not knowing the play call, not knowing the route that Lassiter was supposed to run. But man, that pass to Phillips was wide open. You've got the ball at the 2-yard line, if not a touchdown. You had a safety coming over to close, but he wasn't going to get there in time to break up the pass. So that one was tough. And a first half like they had puts you in that position where there's zero room for error. You can't have those anymore because of how the first half went. And then you go and you score on 4 straight drives. I mean, their offense was unstoppable. And so if we do get the chance to go to a conference championship game, you hope it's against ASU. Because honestly, out of Colorado, even Iowa State, I like our chances against ASU. I really do. I think we responded well. We do well in revenge games. That would be the most intriguing scenario to me, to have a same season revenge game opportunity. And the way we played in the second half, the way that game ended, that BYU's hungry and they figured something out against that defense. I like our chances in a scenario like that.
So you've moved us on to the end of the game, which as time has gone on, the more I think angry and frustrated I'm getting over it. And none of this changes the fact that BYU played terrible in the first half, and that they, that led to them needing all these things to go right, like you said. So I'm not saying any of this would have changed the result of this game. Oh, if only this, we would have had, we would have won. Like, I'm not trying to make any excuses like that. Very well.
Hold on. No one stole the game from us?
No one stole the game. No one stole the game. The game was lost by BYU. And oddly enough, our AD did run out on the field, but it wasn't to braid anybody. It was to help protect his player. And Chase Roberts was down on the field while people were rushing for the second time. So, but my issue is more of just how this was handled, and then also how the Big 12 I haven't heard anything about fines or anything about the Big 12 stepping, and maybe there are. I haven't looked that hard, but I haven't seen anything on that. So it's just crazy. So I just want to talk about some of this. Johnny Linehan kind of summed up a lot of these issues, but he said, so you can throw the ball immediately into the stands inside the tackle box. So talking about the intentional grounding, rush the field early, yell and touch the officials for 15 minutes straight, and pull a player down by their nameplate on a Hail Mary. Man, I love this sport. So again, in a Kiwi accent there, and but I think he nails it. I mean, there's just so many things that happen that it's like, okay, even if you make the argument it wasn't intentional grounding, which I think there's a strong argument saying it was, but even if you say it wasn't, I just go back and think about that Utah game when they rushed the field early. There was a flag on that play. So there was no flag for delay of game or anything, or Kenny Dillingham coming up to, just watching this video, I'll keep it on mute here, but he's just up at the officials, yelling at him, cursing at him, and they're all up there touching him. And the whole time, like, how is that allowed for a coaching staff while they're under review of a play and trying to intimidate. Like, I mean, Satake's had his moments with officials. All coaches do. But like this, I mean, look at this. You got security around and everything. And all these students. So you watch right here, and it shows these referees. Like, how are they supposed to do their job while they're surrounded by this mass of people and trying to do this review? And the fact that there's no repercussions for this, it seems like that should have been a penalty right there. The delay of game, something, and then that puts BYU in a better position. Again, maybe BYU still doesn't get it. You're still looking at a Hail Mary. Like, it's still tough. Even though you're closer, you still have to come down with it. And then what gets me too is you talk about Chase Roberts. I mean, and it means nothing because the game was over, but he's not even down. And, yet they don't even try to like fix the situation because he's not even down. The play's not even dead yet. You could say like eventually his forward progress stops, but they're already rushing the field before that's even the case. And the refs just like wave it dead. They even said incomplete. And I'm watching, you can see him holding the ball. He's clearly got it. And it looks like there's potential face mask right there. There's a horse collar. We've all seen that. And so I don't even know. I think those are personal fouls that those result in an extra untimed play. Isn't that right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah.
So again, that's another shot. Those are other things but again, because everybody was allowed to be on the field, that they never really took care of the situation. You could see everybody still sitting there, standing there on the sidelines, not really out of the way. Like, if I'm there, you can just say, hey, we're going to throw a flag if you can't get these people off the field. And, that would have gotten people off the field real fast, and say, hey, we're going to throw another one. If you don't get them off, start doing it immediately. And it's that easy. And so I don't know. And I know Big 12 has rules against storming the field. So again, I haven't heard anything about a fine, and maybe they don't announce those because it's to be expected, but I don't know. I think those types of things are normally announced. So it was just a wild ending. ASU completely lost control of their stadium, of the fans, intimidating refs, all these things, which was just embarrassing and frustrating that this game couldn't be given a fair chance to be played out. That was more than anything. Again, more than likely BYU still doesn't win, but for it to happen like this is just despicable.
Yeah, it was really, it's a bad look for ASU. It's a bad look for the Big 12, bad look for the Big 12 officiating crew. Because that's on ASU and that's on the officiating crew to keep control, and they completely lost it. And so, yes, there should have been numerous flags. You can argue the intentional groundings probably should have taken place. Definitely the fans storming the field. That's a given. You storm the field before the game's over, that's a flag. If you set a foot on the field and you are not a live player, it's a flag. No matter who you are, you're a fan, you're an AD, you're anything else, it is a flag on the field when you walk on the field during play and you're not one of the 22 players or the referees that should be on the field. You got to protect players. You got to do a better job. And I don't know how you're supposed to control 70,000 people in a stadium who are rushing the field. BYU's, had plenty of field rushes, and it's part of the fun of college football that happens. It doesn't happen in any professional venue. It just happens in court storming in college basketball and field storming in college football. And so I don't want to take it away. I'm not one who's sitting there saying we got to do away with this. It's been around for generations. It's an awesome part of the sport, but you have to either control it or deal with the consequences when you don't. Either one is fine with me. Don't do away with field storming, but don't allow it to happen like this, impact the game, and then not do anything about it. You got to do something about it. Throw the flag, do something, do penalize the team in some way because they didn't control it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think like that, if you're saying, hey, I mean, BYU controlled its fans against K-State because they were ready to storm and like, hey, don't do it. That's going to cost us money. Don't do it. Mm-hmm. And if you still can't, because people are going to be people and going to do what they want, you throw that flag, people are going to start reconsidering real quick. You want
to be the dude that lost the game for your team because you stormed the field, like.
Right, we're giving them now, a more manageable pass here, because where was the Hail Mary from? What was it, around midfield or?
Yeah, I think it was.
Anyway, so that it was just a mess. It was disaster. I like this and maybe I don't think Kelly Ford has any tie to BYU. But I like this. He said, this has to be a penalty on ASU, right? And then intentionally grounding, yes. He said, actually, this is a separate tweet from him that I meant to pull up another one, but he said, hey, I really am trying I really try to like Kenny Dillingham, but he's making it really hard right now. And I mean, I agree. Like, he seemed like a likable coach. I love that he's playing for or coaching his alma mater, that he's had a turnaround with ASU in just a couple of years. Like, it's really impressive, really cool for that program. But yeah, he was making it really hard to like him the way he was behaving. And you see that juxtaposed with Satake and how calm actually for what he was. And honestly, I don't know why he wasn't talking with the refs. I'm sure they had conversation, they were talking, but why he wasn't saying, hey, like, something has to be done here. And he just, okay, and took it. And so very different approaches to that. So anyway, I got that off my chest. I've just, the more I think about it, the more just insane thinking about that whole situation is. And it's really unfortunate. However, BYU should not have let it get to that point. And then there's have you heard about the leaking of Batty's halftime speech?
No.
Not sure if that's made it your way. Well, let's just say he uses some colorful language, but it was recorded by what looks like to be someone who's one of the security guards outside the locker room, able to overhear, and he's recorded and then post it. So someone says, I don't know if this is factual or not, probably ASU, like, if someone doesn't know that they're being recorded and shouldn't expect to be, that's illegal. And then also just in terms of, what if they're talking game plan and they're actually talking strategy there, and he's able to record all that and send that to the other team. And so there's a lot of issues there. Obviously, a lot of people are thinking, oh, look at this, how BYU, they're cursing or this or that. And honestly, I haven't seen one BYU fan come out like, I mean, for me, in my mind, it's like when you hear about a politician or a celebrity that comes out that turns out they're like a skis ball, I'm just like, why are we surprised? Like, I just assume that's like my default. I just assume that's the case. So with like football players in the locker room, I just kind of assume that's the case. So anyway, whatever he did, whatever he said, I don't know if they usually act like that, or if that was or not, or if it had an impact. But if that happened to motivate BYU into the second half and played a hand in it, then so be it. But it's just another thing with ASU. All this stuff getting leaked and coming out is just handled so poorly. What a disaster. And it should be embarrassing. And then we talk about this last summer, did a video and we had conversation. We're talking about, okay, what do we expect rivalries to be in this? And we didn't, okay, what if there were like 3 protected rivalry games for each team? And so we're kind of going through and figuring out, okay, who should each team have if they had some protected games? And we ended up doing, I think for BYU, had Arizona instead of Arizona State, more because there's been more recent history. And so we're like, yeah, that kind of works. And ASU and Utah seems to be a little more heated. And so we went that way. But now I would switch that out. Like, ASU is on there, at least in my mind, 100% for BYU in terms of rivalries. Obviously, you got Utah, and then there's some others. Seems like a lot of BYU's rivalries seem to be friendly rivalries, like Baylor and K-State now. But ASU, that to me is a full-on rivalry now. And before we move on, because something you've already alluded to, I just wanted to show this because I thought this was really interesting. I didn't catch it, but he said some BYU dude says on Twitter, funniest thing in the game at several points, as BYU fans were so loud while chanting BYU while ASU was on offense that the ASU crowd was chanting ASU louder, and it was so noisy for them that Levitt was trying to quiet everyone. Outfanned at the very least. So that to me is hilarious. I mean, it did look like a really good showing. I mean, no surprise. BYU always shows up really well, but it took over in Orlando. But there are so many members there and BYU alum in Arizona. So anyway, Max Hall was there. I wonder what he thinks about this fan base, how classy they are compared to Utah. But
he might have some thoughts.
he says he's still an ASU fan, but I don't know. I wonder how his thoughts on how all this played out, but I think I can guess. But anyway, So now we're looking at a situation where BYU no longer controls its own destiny. Again, that's not on ASU's fan base or the crowd control or anything. That's on BYU for losing 2 games in a row. And honestly, this game, ASU, BYU looked pretty outmatched. The Kansas game, I still feel like BYU looked like overall the better team,
Yeah.
which is crazy considering how well they played against Kansas. And now they've won games against 3 ranked opponents, 3 straight
Kansas is
games.
a tear. They're on a tear. You do not want to run into the Kansas Locomotive right now. They are. I mean, that just shows you a lot in college football matters when you play your best football, which is why BYU is struggling right now. They are not playing their best football right now, and Kansas is the team that's what, like a total of 14 points from being undefeated and number 2 in the country. I mean, Kansas is just playing on another level right now, like a team possessed. Um, and that's a team you do not want to play right now. If there was like a play-in tournament instead of a conference championship like basketball, you steer clear of Kansas because they're impressive.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm not going to toot my own horn, but I did keep picking Kansas this year. I kept thinking it was going to happen anytime. So finally, it did. Kind of when I was
Cost you a few losses or it cost you a few in the loss column, but you were right. You were right.
So, although I think I was kind of getting off the bandwagon right when they're really turning it on, like the K-State game, it's like, okay, that was a rivalry game. Kansas lost a lot of close ones, didn't put too much stock in it. ISU, you're like, yeah, they've been kind of fraudulent maybe. And then BYU, you're like, cool. They've been cooling off lately. Weird game, whatever. But then what they did to Colorado, can't like question that anymore. That is 4 games against ranked opponents. That
Holds them to 21 points, that offense. I mean, again, I over and over said Kansas State was an awful defense, and our offensive output was just horrendous because that's a bad defense. And they may be a bad defense statistically, but boy, they showed out against Colorado. That was impressive.
Yeah. And now Colorado, according to Deion Sanders, they were kind of drinking some of their own Kool-Aid. I can't remember the analogy he used, but something along those lines. And so, which may be the case. I mean, I think we may have seen a little bit of that with BYU, which again goes to show how hard it is to win and keep winning, and makes you appreciate that. The kicker with all this, though, is that, what kills me about it is that, like, there were so many games with upsets that BYU needed to move back up to get in position that if they win against a ranked ASU on the road, that they are then, with, A&M was behind them, but losing kind of out of the picture. Ole Miss ahead of them, Bama, and Indiana. I don't, we'll see what happens with them. I think. Unfortunately, I never root for Ohio State, but that was probably the best case scenario for BYU and having Indiana lose big. It would have been worse if Indiana lost by like a point. But to lose big against Ohio State was probably good for BYU. And then BYU just shows up how it did in the first half, which just makes this incredibly frustrating. But like I was saying, they don't control their own destiny anymore. So BYU is now, this is what we're looking at in terms of outcomes. And let's see if I can get this even bigger here. So BYU, these are kind of the scenarios of how BYU gets in. Obviously, we have to beat Houston, but we'll know before then if that game even matters, because if both ISU and ASU win their games, then BYU is out due to the tiebreaker, the head-to-head with ASU, and then Iowa State. I think their in-conference opponents have better records overall than BYU's in-conference opponents. So, and that's basically it. It's that simple. BYU has to beat Houston, but again, well before that, because it's a late game, we'll know either Iowa State or ASU has to lose its game. And these are kind of the odds based on FPI, which again, put whatever stock into it you want to. I think it's a little bit it's not my favorite, but on the other hand, it's kind of the best I think we have. But I mean, these are the odds of each one of these scenarios playing out. And so you add it up, it's basically a 50-50 chance that BYU has that they're in or out. And this again comes down because you lost 2 games in a row. Like, you controlled your own destiny. You had to win. And you really just had to win 2 out of 3 games against
Yep.
teams that you should have been able to beat or at least hang with. And BYU technically, looking at the score, did hang with these teams, but now it all comes down to this last game. And if BYU doesn't make it, and we'll talk about it more, I guess, next week, but if BYU, for whatever reason, these scenarios don't play out, maybe both teams win or BYU loses, whatever, if BYU doesn't make it to the conference championship game, even though they've completely outperformed expectations, will you consider this a successful season for BYU?
So it's hard because of recency bias, and it certainly leaves a bad taste in your mouth. But a 10-win season in year 2 in the Big 12, um, I, I I love that. I know it. I know we're coming off the back-to-back losses, and we were this close to a playoff berth if we don't get in. And there's going to be a lot of hand wringing about what could have been. But man, a 10-win season. You would have told me that 3 months ago, and not only would I have laughed you off the screen, but I would have said, "Yeah, absolutely. I'll take a 10-win in third or fourth place in the Big 12. I'll take it." Right? What is that? The Pop Tarts Bowl or what? I don't know, but sure, let's do it. I mean, that's where we were last year, and the pain of last year. And there's pain right now. There's pain right now. But the pain of last year, compared to the moments against Kansas State and Oklahoma State and Utah, and those moments that we had this year, we had none of that last year. None of it. We had a win against Arkansas, which was awesome, and the rest of the year was like just straight pain. So I'll take it. I'll take the 10-win season. It's absolutely a success. It's not the success we wanted when you win 9 straight to start the year. You're 9-0. You rank 6th in the country. Then the Pop Tarts Bowl is not a good feeling. It's not. And it'll take a while for, I think, Utah fans, or excuse me, for BYU fans to lick our wounds and say, "Yeah, it's going to be okay." But yeah, absolutely. It's a success no matter how we cut it, and I think time will help heal some wounds, and we'll look more favorably on this season. Losing these 2 back to back the way we did, underperforming, losing last second, all those things really, really, really hurt. But you cannot take away from a 10-win season. You can't. Year 2 in the Big 12 and a 10-win season, I'll take it.
Yeah, that's a nice, optimistic outlook on it. I'm not in the mood for it right now, though. So I'm kidding. Well, I'm kind of kidding. But I think in terms of momentum for this program, of recruiting and perception of the program and moving forward, yes, it's still a success in, I think, all those ways. I think if you ask this team, though, they'll tell you absolutely no, it was not a success. And, and I would expect them to have that mindset. They said they had great aspirations. Well, great, prove it, because right now they're not showing it and their confidence is really shaky. So I'd like to see this team get back to what they've been doing all season. But having said that, of these 3, so in this scenario, BYU is playing ASU, and that would be the most likely of the 3. In this scenario, in the second one, they would be playing Iowa State. And in this scenario, they'd be playing Colorado, assuming they are able to take care of business against Oklahoma State. I think that's feels like a safe bet. That's got to be a much higher percentage than these. So of those 3, you've already talked about ASU. Wanting to play ASU. And actually, I put out a poll asking this question on my Twitter. You see my handle there. If you have Twitter, go on and vote in that. I'm not trying to drive traffic to my Twitter account. I don't care about that. But I really am curious to see what people think about that and where BYU fans, who BYU fans want to play. You said you talked about a potential rematch with ASU. Would you like that? Or would you like to go up against one of these other schools that BYU hasn't played yet, or go against Colorado and Deion Sanders with all the hype and publicity that would get? I don't know. What would be your preferred outcome if BYU is able to make it to the conference championship?
Yeah, I'd say for me, number 1 is ASU because of how the game ended. I'd love another crack at that team. I think the players would too. So I love that scenario. You play them 1 week, 2 weeks later you're playing again in the conference championship game. I like that. Number 2 would be Colorado, just because of all the hype. I think it'd be really fun to go against Deion Sanders' team. They get all the glitz and the glamour, and it would be fun. It would be a fun matchup. And then Iowa State's last. I like our chances against Iowa State more than I like our chances against Colorado. I think Colorado's the better team in that matchup. And so I think the toughest opponent would be Colorado. It would just be that'd be a fun conference championship game with the attention it brings. So my first choice is Arizona State because of the raw emotion right now. Second Colorado and third Iowa State.
And I hope our team wants that too, although I hope they're just thinking about Houston. But I hope if they were to think about it, which again, I hope they're not, that they would say ASU too. But me, I would just want to win. Like I'd be happy to play ASU or Iowa State, because I do think that would be the best odds and best matchup for BYU. I mean, losing twice to ASU, I don't know if I'd be able to handle that. And so the fact that would be on the table, although beating them, getting redemption, and getting payback, and like you said, I do like BYU in a rebound game, and they seem to figure something out in that second half. Although, again, I don't feel like we ever truly shut down their offense, so I'd like to see a little bit more. But man, with the way the Levitts were popping off before the game and after the game, I'd love to. I don't know if you saw any of that, but that content I will also not play on this channel. So. But him just like, oh yeah, I got it. And I don't know whether that's true or whether that would help them or not. He had a great game, and it's definitely going to be a challenge. So yeah, I'd love that revenge game as well. It's certainly going to be a wild ride, but what an exciting weekend. Again, we're in November playing meaningful football. It's just unfortunate that, and we thought that BYU season would come down to this game against Houston, but we thought it was to get to a bowl game.
Yeah, we thought it was 5-6. We would just come off beating a really bad Arizona State team, right? We were 4-6, and now we're getting to that 6th win against Houston, crossing our fingers. And so that's what I mean. It's hard to remember the preseason expectations when you've been number 6 nationally at 9-0. It's really hard to remember that because the recency bias is, man, we were riding high and things were great and we were going to the playoff, and all that is technically still in front of us because of how we played. But if we win on Saturday and Iowa State and Arizona State win, it's not what Cougar fans want to hear, and I get it. It's not what Cougar fans want to hear right now. We'll have plenty of time to talk about that later. But man, a 10-win season, that's pretty cool.
And I can't believe I was a quick side note because I was going to mention at the top of the video, man, BYU too had a great weekend in terms of all other sports that we played, and
basketball, cross country championships. I mean,
winning 2, and both were back to back, right? Men's and women's cross country national championships, going and sweeping that. And I turned on the men's at the end, and I just had good timing with it, turning it on. I don't know really how to watch cross country. I don't know if it's the most compelling thing to watch, but BYU, they had one guy, I can't remember who now, was near the front of the pack, but there were some guys that were, he's kind of the second wave of guys up there, still near the front, and I was like, oh, bummer. And then there's like, yeah, but BYU, they've got the points over on the side, and it just must be total where I think your top 5 runners finish or whatever, and so they just had enough guys ahead of everyone else that they won that. So it was super impressive. But men's soccer as well, not a NCAA sport because of Title IX stuff, whatever, but they went and won their, I guess, club league or whatever it's classified as. And that was a 5-peat. And they just, thrashed competition all season. So that was huge. In terms of official sports, we had, men's basketball, another one where they just ran away with it. And women's basketball as well, right? And so,
Colorado.
So what a great weekend. I was just afraid when we started the day so well. I was like, I hope we left some juice for the football team because they're going to need it. And I think they used up a little too much. It came up about 2 yards short. So
that's right.
Bummer. But anyway, so let's move on and do our picks now for this weekend because that is going to be where all of this ultimately plays out. And like we said, BYU no longer controls its own destiny. So let's see what we think will happen here. Well, first, actually, let's pull up how we did.
A lot of red. That's a lot of red there, Trevor.
There is a lot of red. So I stand by my picks. I knew Arizona was a bit iffy, and I knew Utah was a bit iffy. Although Utah nearly came through, and had
They
they
did.
won,
They did.
BYU's ticket would be punched right now.
If they would control their own destiny against
Or yeah,
Houston.
if
So
they're Houston,
let's not get ahead of ourselves.
Sorry, you're right. They would have been in position though to by beating Houston. So like you said, they control their own destiny. So that was unfortunate. Even at the time, I was actually recording my live reaction after the game during that game. Kind of had my eye on the score, not even fully comprehending just how much that would have helped BYU at the time because I hadn't even had time to digest all the tiebreakers and stuff. UCF, I feel like that was a
total coin flip.
Yeah, so I don't feel bad about that one. But talk about controlling your own destiny. I no longer control my destiny. In fact, I am out.
Yeah, I mean, you played it. You had a really, really strong season until week 13, and now
until the last two games of the season. Shoot, I might need some more. Some more math magic here and help me out. But you look at this, and really, I can't. There's not enough games to come back because you and I picked too similarly. So I've lost. You've
2 years in a row, Trevor.
You've officially won the regular season. I kept it much closer this year, so at least it was interesting. But maybe we'll figure out how things go in the postseason. There's always a chance.
There's always a chance.
Like I said, we do not have more than 6 games selected differently in this. And I thought about going through, and I was like, I'm just going to Hail Mary it and just
do it. Just pick opposite.
That's really the only way.
In the Big 12, that's not a bad idea. You never know.
That's true. You never know. We already talked about Colorado. We'd like to see them lose because that makes it just a little bit easier for actually, it doesn't really impact BYU's odds at all. It just impacts whether BYU would face Colorado or not, or have a chance to face Colorado or not. But does Oklahoma State have anything left in the tank after Colorado just kind of got kicked in the groin?
Not after Colorado lost to Kansas. They come out angry in this one, and poor Oklahoma State, man. It's been a long season, and it's going to be long. Well, it'll be shorter because no bowl game. This is the last game of the season. They can go home, but it's definitely Colorado in this one.
And honestly, it might be an act of mercy at this point. I think they're probably thankful that they
send them home. Call it good. On to 2025.
Just tell them to. Well, never mind. I was gonna make some comment, but yeah. Anyway, let's move on. So, how about Utah at UCF? They showed some life last week.
This had to be the most difficult pick to me of the entire week. Oddly enough, you got 2 4-7 demoralized teams that are not going bowling. Both have serially underperformed this year. Who do you pick in that? Like I have no idea. It's at UCF. Maybe you can tilt it that way. Utah looked a lot better last week against Iowa State when they still technically had a chance to go to a bowl game. I don't know. It's just playing for pride now.
Yeah, and I'm not sure Utah has any, although I don't know if UCF does either. Utah would be in many ways a good pick based on how they performed against Iowa State. But if it's that much of a toss-up, why would I pick Utah? So I'm going with UCF. Do you remember who you picked? Okay.
Yeah. I went with the Utes. I'm gonna cheer for them to end their season on a good note because it's been a rough year for that fan base.
You're nice with the
bless their hearts. Bless their little hearts.
I will say it would be nice for my dad, but he doesn't watch this anyway, so I don't have to. So, okay, Kansas at Baylor. For me, this was one of the tougher ones to pick. Well, not really, because Baylor was another one who's really turned it on. I think they are a tough team. It just seems like, can anyone really pick against Kansas at this point in the season?
They're a freight train. You'd be crazy to pick against them. They're a freight train. They cannot be stopped. They're peaking, unfortunately for them, at the wrong time. They needed this just a little earlier in the season. But I don't care who they're playing. Unless it's against Oregon, I'm picking Kansas.
So this won't happen, but do you think that Kansas deserves to be ranked based on how they look right now and what they've done right now? I mean, how if you put them up against teams on paper, which is all the rankings and things are, it's on paper. Um, you're looking at okay, who would want to play Kansas right now, and who would you feel about feel good about picking over Kansas at this moment? Using that logic, the eye test, like the committee says they use, wouldn't you kind of need to consider Kansas up there? I mean, you can't because of their record, but
So I mean, the committee basically makes their rankings a form of power rankings.
yeah,
When you say it's the eye test, it's basically power rankings. And so you could argue that, but they're also looking at the full body of work. And so you can't ignore the bad losses on Kansas's record, which they do have bad losses. Even though they were close games, they're still bad losses.
that's true.
Uh,
They need more
and
good losses like Boise State or had against
exactly,
Oregon or Notre Dame
exactly.
versus Northern
Against
Illinois.
NIU, you got to get those high quality losses in there to be considered. No, what's really weighing Kansas down is that you got 6 high quality losses versus versus 1 or 2. So I think if you're considering the body of work, you can't. I mean, it's the game is 60 minutes, and because Kansas melted down in the last 3 minutes of 6 games, you can't rank them in the top 25, even unless you're saying second half power rankings. That's the only way you can rank Kansas highly, and the committee's not doing that. You have to look at the full body of work.
Well, there's a lot of things the committee's not doing, but all right. So West Virginia at Texas Tech should be a fun one. Potential, this could get interesting. Who you got?
It could. It's Neil Brown's swan song. I don't know if West Virginia's gonna keep him, but even that isn't enough to win at Texas Tech. Texas Tech took some good steps forward this year. I think they put a stamp on the season and win.
Yeah, with this West Virginia team, they've been really hard to peg this season. I think they do have the potential to go in and beat Texas Tech, but I'm not putting my money on it. So, how about the game which Arizona just gained a whole lot more fans? Where BYU fans will for once be rooting for Arizona. And, it's a rivalry game. Things could get weird. Maybe ASU's buying some of their own hype. I don't know. Do you give him any chance more than FPI, whatever that was, pretty low?
I wish. I wish. Arizona's been that bad this year. Just bad. Unable to get anything going. They've got incredible talent on that team, but they can't get over the coaching change. I really wish they could, but I think ASU stomps them. And ASU could get distracted. They could get up in the hype of the moment. All that could happen. But even if it does, I don't think Arizona State has enough execution ability to go out there and beat Arizona State, even in a close game.
Ditto.
Sorry.
Okay. Here's an interesting one. TCU at Cincinnati. We love these Conference USA matchups.
TCU's peaking better in the second half of the season. That's why I got them. I think they're both good offenses. If Cincinnati hadn't lost at home to West Virginia recently and then laid a complete egg, they weren't even competitive against Kansas State. Kansas State came out angry. So I got TCU in this one. I think their offense is just too much for Cincinnati to hang with. Cincinnati's looking to next year. They'll go to a bowl game. They'll build on this year. It's certainly a good step forward for them, but I think TCU stomps them in this last game.
Cincinnati is doing what Arizona is supposed to be doing in year 2. Arizona State, sorry, is supposed to be doing. So
yes, exactly.
Please tell ASU that they need to be playing more like Cincinnati and to just kind of take it easy this week. Sorry. I'm with you on that. TCU's got a high-flying offense, and since he's been in a bit of a lull, but good for them, really building on what they did in year 1. All right. So since we don't have much faith, Arizona is going to take care of business. It all comes down to Farmageddon.
Yes, Farmageddon is one of the best rivalry names in the country.
Yeah.
But I like Kansas State in this one. They are a very good team. They're better than the team that showed up against Houston. They came out and they played angry against Cincinnati. I don't think Iowa State is as good as their record shows. They've had some clutch moments. They're kind of the opposite of Kansas, where they've pulled through when they've needed to, where Kansas has not. But I don't think they have the talent level of Kansas. And so I see Kansas State coming in frustrated with how the season has gone, and they're going to take it out against Iowa State, even though technically Iowa State has more to play for. Kansas State does not have a berth in the conference championship on the line in this game. Iowa State does. And so Iowa State comes out with that extra motivation, but it's a rivalry game. And I've just all season long I felt like this was Kansas State's game to win. I thought it would put Kansas State in the conference championship game. They stumbled earlier on in the season, but I still have a lot of confidence in Kansas State. That is a very, very good football team, and I think they beat Iowa State.
What kind of deals do I have to make with Taco Bell to ensure that Kansas State wins this game? What beefy
How much money do you
burrito,
got?
anything, anything I can put on the line? Yeah, I do think Kansas State is the better team, and I think they'll come out motivated. I don't have too much faith in ISU, even removing my bias, just looking at them, the body of work throughout the season. So. Boy, I sure hope so, because then that brings us to the last game where we got Coog on Coog action going. And really, at this point, again, BYU will know if the conference championship game is even on the line still. So you are not afraid to pick against BYU when you don't think they have it. Do you think that BYU is going to be able to pull out one last time to keep their season, this special season going?
I do. The second half against Arizona State really gives you a lot of confidence. BYU seems to be a little streaky on offense this year, where they disappear for quarters, multiple quarters spanning multiple games, and they turn it back on. And it just felt like things were clicking in the second half against Arizona State. You think that continues on? Defense is Houston's forte, right? They lean on that. They don't have much of an offense. And you just feel like BYU is going to come out and smother that Houston offense. It's senior day. It's the end of the year. BYU is coming out angry after 2 straight losses against an opponent that is inferior to Arizona State and Kansas. And so I think they come in at home. They take care of business. Whether or not the conference championship game is on the line, you feel like they're coming out and really taking it to them. If they don't, if BYU does lose this game, I think you have to look at something programmatically that's an issue, that you can't come back from those losses. BYU's mental strength had been the focal point, the strength of that team up until the Kansas Arizona State sequence. And at some point you got to bounce back, and it felt like they had some fight in them in the second half. And I just feel like Houston is that team that's ripe for the pummeling for BYU to take out their frustrations on. And I think that's what happens this Saturday.
Yeah, I am going with the Coogs with a U in this one because at BYU we know how to spell.
With a U?
Yeah.
University of Houston Cougars?
No, they spell. Sorry, because they spell Coogs Coogs.
Ah, that's right. That's right. That poor fan base.
Yeah. And so, I mean, it already tells you something right there when they can't even spell their nickname right. So, yeah, my question is, I do feel very confident. So does FPI, and everything suggests that BYU should win this. We're going back to home game, senior night game, whatever, Vampire Cougs, all that good stuff. But more than anything, yeah, BYU needs to end their season strong. And so what I'm going to be watching is this going to be a game where they let Houston stay in it, where it takes, going into the fourth quarter, or can BYU put this one away early and really run away with it? And that's what I'd like to see. I'd really like to see them kind of say, hey guys, the last couple of games were fluky. We're getting things back on track, and really roll Houston and find themselves hopefully in the conference championship game, where I feel a little bit less confident, but at least you show up, participation trophy. So it's 2024, so those are worth a lot. So, all right, we did not get power rankings updated, but because we ended up meeting a little sooner than I had planned on, and did not get that all pulled together. But looking at what you had pulled together, I'm trying to pull it up now. Looks honestly at this point pretty similar to what I was thinking. I was actually going to put Kansas first, but you had ASU first. But either way, top 2 teams, I think, right there. I think then you then had Baylor, which I think is a strong choice. Definitely be up in the top 4. ISU above Colorado. I know they just barely squeaked by Utah. I still think that's Colorado. I definitely still.
That's me dinging Colorado for the loss more than anything Iowa State has done. Like I said, I don't have a ton of confidence in Iowa State, but Colorado lost a game similar to BYU where you had a chance to punch your ticket and you didn't do it. And so I dinged them for the loss more than Iowa State accomplishing anything this season.
And then since we're talking about momentum and all that stuff, that comes into power rankings. It's really kind of looking at how things moving. You have TCU, then Kansas State, then BYU at 8. And that, I mean, BYU at 8 feels kind of fair just for how they've looked the last couple of weeks. But then when I look at these other, like TCU ahead of BYU seems like a stretch. So I don't know. Either way.
TCU has quietly won a lot of games this back half of the season. They have, if you look back at their recent games, they've scored a lot of points and they keep winning. And they're sitting right now at, are they 7-4, looking to go 8-4 on the season? It's not a bad year. Most of that success has been second half of the season.
Yeah. And then after that, so going on the bottom half of the conference, we head off with Texas Tech, which I could even see them being up a couple spots. But yeah, that seems about right. I wouldn't put them any lower than 9. Then West Virginia, Cincy, Houston, Arizona, UCF, Oklahoma State, Utah, and that whole, from West Virginia down feels pretty accurate. I think that, I mean, all the other things are kind of, you're being kind of nitpicky with those other picks, but that whole back half feels about right. So anyway, we'll see. We got one more week for that all to shake out, and then we'll try to, because we forgot to do power rankings last week, don't have it ready this week, but we'll have ultimate power rankings for the final week next week. But in addition to that, again, we will be going live to react after the Houston game, hopefully with some very good news. And hopefully we'll be able to end the season with a much better taste in our mouth than, that we've had the last couple weeks, and kind of regain some of that magic that, it's been such a special season. All right, Adam, any final words before we, go eat a lot of turkey and get nice turkey comas and watching some football. Actually, BYU basketball on Thanksgiving.
Basketball got a big test. I'm excited to see that one. That's
so actually we'll have to break that down too. I'm excited now that we're getting into a little bit more meaningful basketball to really see how this team does.
Ole Miss looks like a beatable team now. They were ranked to start, and they've really struggled against all their teams. So I hope BYU comes out strong against Ole Miss. They need that, and then you're likely playing Purdue in the championship of that little tournament there, and that would be really cool to match up against Purdue. So awesome week for the Cougars basketball team. I hope they can play well. But all I have to say is go Wildcats, go Wildcats, go Wildcats, and go Cougars, the real kind.
With a U. All right.
I struggle associating BYU with the U, but okay, I see where you go. Go Cougars.
Well, BYU, there. It's right on your shirt. See,
that's right. That's right. We'll take it. We'll take it. We'll take the real Cougs.
Coogs with 1 O. How about that?
It's good.
Okay. All right. Perfect. Well, thanks for watching. Be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and make sure you join us for a live reaction after the game this weekend. We'll also potentially have a Know Your Foe segment with Talking Houston before that game. So got to subscribe so that way you can see if we post it. So all right. Thanks for watching, and go Cougs with 1 O.
Go Cougs 1-0.